So what about the library book, which was all about that fire at the Los Angeles Public Library? Did anybody know about that fire before? I mean, had you heard about it or?
No.
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 Nope.
No, me neither. I don't know where I was in 1986, but I'm not listening to that news.
Well, they said it was on like the 5th page or the, whatever. It
Well,
never
that's
hit
right.
the headline.
Oh, you know what else happened at that time was the Chernobyl thing.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
what I was gonna
That
say.
happened right the next day or so. And so, yeah, the library fire was not mentioned as prominently as it might have been. But what an amazing and interesting, adventure. I thought I liked the way the author presented the book. So would anybody, let's go around and say what we thought. Sally, what did you think about it?
I liked it. I was actually born in California. My parents went to high school and college there and then we moved across the country. So I knew some of the landmarks. So that was interesting to me. And it was just, I didn't know what to expect, but it built a whole big story around librarians. And she mentions the PAC librarians that we read the other book on. And it was, I just found it really interesting. And we'll probably get to this later, but the whole assumption that there was actually arsonist, and then at the end kind of saying maybe there wasn't. I would like to be optimistic and think that it wasn't arson. So that's a whole nother topic, but I enjoyed it. I liked it.
It's still a mystery, right? Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay. Chris, what about you?
Well, when I started it, I thought immediately I wasn't quite sure, but I kept amazing myself. I kept wanting to read it, and just it kept my attention, and I found myself drawn to the book. And it wasn't until about 90% of the book I had finished reading, and then we found out that the young man, whatever, they didn't know for sure, and then telling basically that he was dying and things like that. Then when she went back to that last chapter, when she was talking about going to the library conferences, that's the first time I started skimming, because the rest of it I just found fascinating. And I think it might have something to do with the fact that I'm an American history major. And I crave little details and stuff about things like this. And so I liked it.
Great. Glad to hear that. Vicki, how about you?
Well, I read it about a year and a half ago, so not everything's really fresh in my mind, but two things that really struck me when I read it was the sacredness many of us hold for books. And when she had decided she had to burn a book to really understand, and it was so hard for her to do. I think we all have our level of sacredness for books, and I don't know that mine is quite as high as hers, but yet, when you get a book out of the library and you see someone's turned down the corners of the pages, you think, now, why'd you have to do that? The other thing that I was really glad that I was able to read about was the evolution of libraries and how they're trying to serve society where it's at in the moment. And I'm so thankful for that. And that sort of ties into the amount of respect, apparently, especially we Americans do give to our libraries and have for our libraries and their staff. And I think it's well and hard-earned respect. And I'm glad that we have healthy libraries for the most part.
They're very important, especially right now that they're
Oh,
still
yes.
functioning. Yeah, we appreciate them.
Yeah.
Yes. Elaine, how about you?
Yeah, I thought it was a good book. It was interesting. There is a lot of history on libraries, and what I found interesting too about the beginning librarians being mostly men. And there was interesting stories on the history of some of these librarians. The other fact that I thought was interesting is how large this library became and how many departments were in it and how many people actually work there. So yeah, I learned a lot about libraries, both present and past.
Great. Yeah, I think we all did. So, Ruth, how about you?
Well, I find it interesting because I only picked it up in between a few moments when I had them.
With your company.
Everything that everybody has said, I picked up on as well. So just some of those facts that you've already highlighted, I was lucky enough to read about it, and I found it very interesting. But even though, I mean, I bet I didn't even read a quarter of the book, but there it was.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, another thing is, I don't know if you guys all know, well, maybe Morgan can tell us about the Facebook page, that group that we can join, because I put some YouTube interviews out there of the author and the fire when it actually happened and everything, and that was kind of interesting, but I don't think we all know how to get into that. So maybe you could tell us what you think and tell us how to get into that Facebook page.
Sure. To get into the Facebook group, if you go to our Facebook page, so if you go facebook.com/Door County Library, that will take you to the library's Facebook page. Then you can follow us, so you'll see all the stuff that's happening. And then along the top in the new look and feel, I believe there's 3 or 4 things, and then there's like a caret you can click on to make it drop down, and you will see an option for groups. And one of the groups is Readers Rampant, and click that you want to join it. And I think I don't even think there's a question. I think then it comes to me, and I allow you into the group. So it's a closed group. It's only members of the book club that are in there. So, and then, there's been a couple of people who shared some book titles that they've recommended, and it's a way for you all to communicate with links and that sort of thing about the books that you guys are reading. So. And if you want to, there's other book clubs from the library groups as well. So if you want to join those other groups, feel free to as well. So
okay, great. And Morgan, how did you read the library book? What did you?
I have not read it yet. I know it's been on a number of book clubs, but I do love history books and I love nonfiction. So I tend to do nonfiction in like winter.
Yes.
So like January, I don't know why I always round back to nonfiction then. So I might read it then. I'm living the library life, so
that's true.
I can
You know
write
all about it.
Yeah.
but hopefully no fires.
Yeah,
So.
no fires. I thought it was really interesting because I picked up on a few things, having been to library conventions and all that kind of stuff, and how she was amazed that she went to these conventions and looked around, and she was amazed at the book displays, but also the gadgets and the equipment. And I loved it in this book when they told about the old Gaylord machine where you used to punch out the cards. When you checked out, you had to go click, click and punch the date and put it in the pocket, And did you see at the back of the book, there is a pocket. There's a pocket picture.
It's a picture.
Yeah.
And I saw
Yeah.
it. Oh,
Yeah.
And that's got her son's name. It's got important names there.
Yeah, it does.
For her grandson or grandson. Yeah.
But it was funny because I looked at it and I thought, oh, there's a card in there, but no. But, and she also mentioned Overdrive, which is, she had gone to visit this Overdrive, I don't know what you call it, a group that we use when we can download ebooks through the library. And our library has it here, which all the connections, all the research that she did and the quirky librarians that she told us about. I think that's what kind of kept us going, and the human encyclopedia and all these unusual people, but they do hang out at libraries sometimes. And
I used to tell my girlfriends pre-librarianism. So I've only been in the library system for almost 3 years now. I'm trained as a graphic designer, and so I was brought on, but I love libraries. But I used to tell my girlfriends in college that instead of going to the bars to go hunt for guys, you should go to the library, find the section of books where you want to, type you want to marry, and like
you
just
get one. Yeah. That's kind of cool. Yeah. Well, there are unusual, interesting, and intelligent and unusual people that hang out there too. But
I like the guy who walked there from Iowa, Loomis.
yes, he walked all
yeah.
across.
Yeah.
Walked all the way to LA to start his job at the library.
He did.
And documented it along the way. Yeah.
I didn't do that just because he wanted to see if he could do it, or he
Eccentric.
He was
the one
a
that wore the velvet corduroy suits or the fancy suits and stuff
Yeah.
to it.
he was
Yeah.
quite a character.
Oh yeah, that's we didn't hear what you thought about the book. If
Oh,
please tell
well,
us.
a lot of what's been mentioned already, I, thought too. It was very interesting. I liked it a lot, and I'm impressed with all of her research and how much time she spent on it. And I like libraries a lot. I always have. So I like the book. I found it, I liked all the different things she brought into it. The history, the characters, the people that work there now and in the past, and how important libraries are. I was a little surprised, if I remember right, she said 350,000 libraries in the country. I thought it would have been more. And how they have evolved when, the computers came out, everyone, e-books and all that, everyone thought it'd be the end of libraries, but no. People really use those computers and the e-books and Wi-Fi.
I see Jen Prater's trying to join us, but she's not quite here yet. So
Okay, it was very good. I liked it a lot.
great, thank you. Had anybody read any of her other books? She did one that I remember the title of, The Orchid Thief, that I think has been made into a movie, but maybe with a different title. And that was a kind of it was about somebody the movie changed it, but it was about stealing orchids and doing stuff. I tried to read that, but I didn't get into it very well. But she has written quite a few other things, and she's mostly a journalist. She's a staff writer, or has been a staff writer for the New Yorker since in 1992, and she's written articles for Vogue and Rolling Stone and Esquire, and let's see, what else has she done? She The Orchid Thief was probably her most notable book, and it was about a profile of a Florida orchid grower, breeder, and collector. And then they did make a film, I think, adaptation, but that doesn't sound right, but it's in quotes, I don't know. Anyway, it changed it. The movie isn't the same as the book, so don't go see the movie unless you want to see another movie.
That was a good article that you forwarded, Nancy.
Oh, did you? That was her interview, wasn't it? Yeah.
That was her interview. Yeah, it was good. Yeah.
Yeah.
It talked about both books.
If you check on YouTube, there was one that was actually done, and I put that one on the Facebook, I think, about that people were interviewed right after the fire, after it actually happened. And there were pictures of the building burning. And I didn't understand. They said the fire was in the stacks and that there were 4 towers where they stored most of the books. And well, but a lot of them were on the shelves too, but it's the towers that were burning. And I didn't quite understand. There was a diagram on there that kind of showed there were towers and things, but then they also said there was not much space to get around in there. I wish I would have had a better map. I didn't understand
I
what he.
couldn't quite picture the stacks and all that either, in the way they
No.
talked about it.
So to try to describe what stacks look like, sometimes it's slang for all of the bookcases, but in the instance of the archival storage, if you've ever watched like any of like computing shows where like the bookshelves move together so that, and then
yes.
move them apart to come between, it's all of that. So everything's very tight,
So it
close, and then you just move them apart to go into.
Oh, so claustrophobic. It would be hard to get in there with your hoses to get the fire out, because that's what one of the firemen that they interviewed, he said that they, they go in, or then the heat was so hot from the fire because of all the books burning, they couldn't stay in very long, but they could inch forward a little bit with the hoses and get back. But it sounded horrific. I don't know.
And they didn't put sprinklers in those days, or they didn't want to because of wrecking the books.
They did, yes, it would be damaging to the books, but shortly after that, they thought perhaps sprinklers would be okay. But I thought it was amazing that volunteers came after the fire and helped clear out all the books, the damaged books, and pack them all up and freeze dry them. Who would have thought?
That was interesting how they froze them. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I wouldn't. And how long did they have to leave them frozen? Didn't they have to leave them in the freezer for quite a while?
Yes, it was a long time before they actually could start, actually trying to see what they could save.
Yeah, yeah.
It didn't reopen for like years, right? 5 years?
It was closed for 7 years, it said. And partly they couldn't decide, I guess, whether to rebuild or tear it down. But it seems, I'm glad they saved it from what they said, because it was such a historic building and interesting. But
I like the links that you sent. The one showed the pictures inside. It was beautiful.
Wasn't it gorgeous?
And her giving that talk, the author giving the talk, the links were good.
Oh, good. Well, thank you. I just thought actually seeing the building, I went to look up the building because I couldn't imagine. But what about Harry Peake? Was he the one that did it, or what happened there? What do you think about him? No?
He was a strange critter. I can't believe he had friends with the tall tales that he kept telling. I have no idea. I don't know that in the end, I don't even think he knew if he did it or not. He can't. I swear that the changing stories, I really don't know if he knew or not.
Yeah, he was an unusual character. Yeah, and strange life. But he was a habitual liar. He never told the same thing twice. He kept changing the stories all the time, and I don't know.
I think he's an example of one of those people, and there are probably a lot more of them than we realize, who so often doesn't tell the truth that they have no clue what the truth is anymore. And they sort of live their current story instead of living the truth of their history.
Yeah, he was kind of a sad person, I thought. But I don't know if I believe he set the fire or not. But do you think somebody set it, or could it have just happened by itself?
Well, they did quite extensively mention how the light bulbs had to be 40 watts instead of 60 because they were burning out, and how the stacks were such that it was a fire trap, a fire waiting to happen. I thought it was interesting that they said later on that it was always assumed if they couldn't find the source that it was arson. And then fire departments changed their tune and said, no, the way they're investigating now, they can find hot spots that really weren't hot spots or weren't the source. So they kind of are rethinking how they determine whether there's arson or not. So I kind of thought he did it at the beginning. And then when they talked about that, I think it probably was an accident.
Could have been
I
the
even
wire.
think of being such an old building, wiring, things like that can just go essentially haywire.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
I thought too that it could have been the bad electrical wiring,
Mhm.
but there were a lot of theories, and there was one theory that I gave some weight to, that he kept mentioning the race of the guard who turned him away because he got there too
Mhm.
early,
Oh, yes.
and he wouldn't let him in. And so one theory was that he had gotten mad enough, and also that it was a black man, because he mentions that several times, that maybe he did it in just sort of being that he was strange, just sort of revenge or out of anger, without thinking of how bad it could have gotten.
Mhm. Yeah, it was an old building. I think it was built in the 20s, and you're right about the wiring. And also, there was one section in there, it wasn't to do with the wiring, but it had to do with the heat. There was no air conditioning in it, and they said the furnace kept coming on even though it was hot, really hot days. Person had recorded all the temperatures. One time it was 104 in there, and they said actually they decided when it got to be 95 they would shut inside the library, they would close it down. And I can't imagine that they could deal with things when they had that heat. And who knew that was in the summer, and the furnace kept coming on. They couldn't figure that out either. You think somebody could have sorted that out for them, but
Yeah.
yeah. But when they redid the building, and they put the the extension or the addition on, they must have addressed that wiring situation. But it sounded more, when they were describing how the building was built at the beginning, it sounded to me more like an art museum with all the sculptures that they had in there and the murals, and
Yeah, it did.
sounded fascinating. Yeah, I thought the one librarian was interesting when he couldn't figure out what he was supposed to do with that one big sculpture. What was it, creation or something? And how he was supposed to care for it. And so he wrote to some museum and asked them. They said, "Well, just dust it off once in a while." So there wasn't anything he should have done about it.
But when you were talking about how it was so artistic, and I looked at the picture in the book of the front of it, I thought that just looks like Hollywood. It looks like, that's what he was making it, I think, how that area was like, what it was like.
Well, wasn't that Art Deco style though? Wasn't that where
Yeah.
it was kind of like Hollywoodish and grand and
Yeah.
And the beautiful garden with all the sculptures and everything, just
Yeah.
arty,
would be
And-
fun to see that. Yeah, I would like
Yeah.
to see that. Yeah. Oh, well, here's a good question. Have you ever wrestled with the idea of giving books away, otherwise disowning them, and then changing your mind about it? People
Well,
must.
I
Give
just gave 8 boxes of books to let me think of the name of I can't, the Miller Art Museum. I can't believe I couldn't think of it. And some of them were large art books. I decided I just wasn't going to keep all those books. So I sort of missed the art books, but I thought that was a good location for them.
What about anybody else? Is it easy for you to give away books that you have read or that you might have liked, or do you hoard them like some people do?
I have purged. When we moved up here, I really purged my library, all different aspects, from the quilt books that I use for
Oh,
my
no.
quilting to art books, to fiction, nonfiction. And I have found myself actually buying back. I'm trying to remember which ones. Oh, Right Side of the Brain. I had to buy another copy of that, but I found one at Bargains, I think. And every now and then when I'm at the library or at Bargains looking at the used books, I'll think, oh, that's one I gave away and I wish I hadn't, so I have to buy it again. So I have done that.
Yeah, I think it's interesting that I put them in a pile or in a bag, and then before I can take them to wherever it is I was going to take them, I take them out, some of them out.
Well, I kept plenty of them too. I kept plenty that I couldn't part with.
Well, if you want to add more to your library stacks, we're having one more book sale
Oh,
on October 24th. So that's not this Saturday, but next Saturday at the
Oh.
Sturgeon Bay Library.
oh, okay, just what we need, more books. Chris, were you going to say something?
I was just going to tell a story about our youngest son. Well, both our sons did this. They were they are avid readers. And both of them, using their own money as they were growing up, fell in love with different series of books. And they had to have, of course, the hardcover book. And the other reason is because when they would put out the books, the fastest way to get to the next book was when the author put it out on hardback. So they couldn't wait until it came to paperback. So both of them had these tremendous collections. Well, it turned out, and I had to do this twice, for some reason they thought I was just going to keep all those books for them for an eternity. And to this day, our youngest son still refers to all his books and how mom got rid of them. So,
Oh, no.
I have a lot of guilt giving books away. And usually what I do is I usually find people who want them, or I'll give them to another.
Chris, your audio is really faded.
I'm lucky to even be here because our internet is not so good. But
Oh, no, you're better.
Better.
okay. So I usually find a new home for books. I read them once, and I'm very content.
Yeah.
I save them because I think I'm going to reread them.
I see it never do. Yeah.
But I say because I really like them, and I might reread them, but they were, they have notes in them and little sticky things and everything. And I might want to go back and see that, and nobody else would want it after I've marked it all up. I don't.
Except that I think that is really cool to be given a book on which someone has made notes. That's like a huge conversation. I love it.
Well, I can get a lot of them.
Yeah.
Oh,
I was confined to bed for an illness, nothing terribly serious, but I was in bed, and a pastor brought me a book, and he had all his comments on it. And I just got to know that pastor so much better through the comments that he made in the book. It was really cool.
I love that. I have a couple of book things. I don't think I'm a hoarder yet, but you don't think you're a hoarder when you are one. But I had two great aunts who never married, and they were school teachers in the Wyoming Territory. Twins. And I got a series of their travel books. They traveled extensively, and then they would write notes or what they ate or all that sort of thing, and would pick up books. And I just love them. And then my grandmother gifted me the original Tales of Narnia, and had little notes because she would read it to all of the kids during camping. And so it had all the camping trips written in the back. And so I love all those kinds of books.
Those are Yes. Well, Jan, you came in later and didn't get to tell us what you thought about the book. So briefly, could you give us a
Oh,
few
I
comments?
learned so much about that period of time, and I don't remember much about anybody telling me about this amazing happening. And so I kept reading because I kept entertained by all those, what do you call them, the supervisors who moved in every so few years, and what they thought the library should include, and how it served the community. And you know, they just have so many outlying projects for communities that it's just amazing to see what that job entitles. And I just thought libraries were for old ladies and who came in and brought their bags and took them out. But that changed so much. Oh, thank you.
Well, there are, that's an interesting thought too about the different services that the library offers. And there was one of the early librarians, I think it was way early, and she wanted to rent out tennis rackets and baseball bats to the kids and let it be. And one of the libraries, I heard they wanted to rent tools. And,
That's
you
the
know,
Library of Things.
yeah.
Yeah,
Nick Harper's going to have some fishing poles soon.
Oh.
So,
I hope they get them back. You know,
oh yeah, it's checkout just like books. So
check out just like those. Okay. But that's amazing what things that, you know, who would have thought audiovisual and all the, how far reaching everything is nowadays, and different services that the library provides.
There are some libraries now that are renting out people.
Really, what do these people do?
Yeah, well, for example, if you have never sat down and talked to a Native American who was born in Milwaukee and whatever, or if you would like to know what a 74-year-old gray-haired lady really thinks about the world, the idea is just to make people more understandable, because you've been able to sit and have a conversation with a different kind of person than perhaps you are, or someone a person you've been curious about. For example, I have a Korean daughter-in-law who was adopted here from Korea. And so just having her in my life really made me more aware of a lot of different things about her. But I just happen to have an Asian person in my life. A lot of people wouldn't, but you could go to the library and get to know a particular Asian person, perhaps. That's an example. Am I right, Morgan? Have you heard about that?
I haven't, but I just wrote it down because I'm going to look that up.
Oh, I think
I like it.
I like it.
You know, way
Back
back in the day, they used to say that the reason we didn't understand Black people is because we never got to meet them. So many towns in Wisconsin, people were never exposed to Black people. Well, you know, if you could go sit with a person whose life you've never really understood or been exposed to, think what a conversation that could be.
Yeah, I think it's a fabulous idea. And I think the, like the Zoom or however they would present that would be incredible. I mean, it could even go through one of our libraries. Meet up, you know, and then you just sign in to meet that person and, you know, take turns asking questions or making comments. A fabulous idea. Talk about promoting understanding. I can't think of a better way.
It's like it's a whole resource, you know, wonderful different resources.
I was sitting on an airplane from Arizona to Chicago, I think, one day, sitting in the middle seat, and this young fellow came and sat down next to me, heavily tattooed, very pierced, and certainly not someone that I'd ever spent much time sitting next to. But before the plane left the ground, he said to me, I do not like to fly. I am scared to death to fly. And that opened a conversation that we had all the way to Chicago and gave me a whole new picture of a person that has foibles and just has walked a different road than I have. And I was very glad of it.
Well, there you go. Maybe we should look into that, renting out people or checking out people.
Well, and getting to know what other people are like. We haven't talked about, she had quite a bit in the book about homeless people using libraries.
But we don't have that problem up here, but when we were, well, so much, I don't think, but in Naperville, we got the homeless people on Thursdays. They went around to different neighborhoods where they had a shelter for the evening, and then they, or different towns, and we knew they would come in on Thursday. They were always standing, just like they said in the book. They were standing outside. Some of them had carts, some of them had baskets, and one time, well, for quite a while, we could smell soup being cooked somewhere. And in one of those study Carol things, they had little plugs, you could put in your electric stuff. Somebody must have been plugging in one of those little hot pots back there, because you could smell soup. We could never find it, but we could smell it. But there was you just had to hope that they would, they were fine. It was just different. Like you said, we didn't really know them, and they didn't have any place else to go. And it was, and I liked in the book where they had one, they had a, I can't remember what they called it, where they all the homeless people could come in and sign up for different services. And they had a special day, and the line was all the way out the door for all these people. And they thought that was a good idea, so they could do it all in one place rather than having to go different parts of town to sign in on that. But I thought one of those librarians, I think, I'm not sure if she had to deal with censorship, or was she the one that was keeping the books off the shelf. I thought there was one of her stories, chapters, was about that. And it made me remember that when I first started working at the Naperville Library many years ago, the librarian at the time, a wonderful little lady, but she didn't think certain books should be available to the general public, or maybe the high school or junior high kids that would come in and giggle at them. And so all the books that were related to, how to, well, I know there was a Judy Blume book back there too, but she would keep them in the back room. And they were on a shelf back there. And if you needed to learn about other relationships and things, you'd have to ask at the front desk for that book. And who's gonna do that, so. But oh no, there was one, it was a girl that the books were in a cage, and she was reading through the cage, or they were locked up. That was in the library book one, but I thought that was kind of unusual, but it brought back some memories of things did happen in those days. But now I think we don't do that. I think we just leave them all on the shelves and hope for but so anybody else, the questions in here, I don't know, there's not too many more things. We talked about Mary Peak. Who was Mary Jones? She was one of the librarians. And Charles Loomis, was he the one that walked across the?
He was the one that walked.
Yeah.
He walked, yeah.
There was quite a bit about him.
Yeah.
She had, I think, there were a lot of books written on him. So she had a lot of resources, and he was there for quite a while. She wrote quite a bit about him.
I had one thing that I backing up to the homeless people. I thought it was very honest of her to admit her fear of homeless people. I have had the experience and the honor actually to work at homeless shelters, in the winter in Wisconsin. And it's amazing how good these people really are. Yes, there are people who are not well mentally and they've fallen through the cracks. But there are very few bad-minded people. They look out for each other. That's one of the things. They are protective. Like when I worked, being a woman in a setting like that, I usually worked only when there were two other guys working. I wouldn't work with another woman and one guy. So they would, as the people who were coming to the house, would be protective of the people there. And so I understand her fear. I think that the smell is real. There are times when, there were lots of times they told us, always keep your gloves on, don't touch the coat, don't touch the wheelchair, don't touch anything. Or if you do have to touch it, go wash your hands, good 30-second hand wash. But not all of us would admit that we have that fear of homeless people. Because again, it goes back to haven't had the experience, haven't been around them. So I thought that was real good of her to share.
I think it'd be hard to check out a homeless person, though.
I was thinking about that too.
Check out people.
I think that's maybe a misconception. I suspect there are people who may have been homeless or are on the verge of homelessness in Sturgeon Bay. I can't believe there aren't.
Oh,
And
sure,
having
sure.
worked at Grace Episcopal on the square in Madison, which had the men's homeless shelter while the years I worked there, I agree with you. It's just that we haven't spent time with people who use food pantries, with people who are mentally ill to the point they can't function well in society. And if we want to really understand, we have to spend time with them.
Yeah, we should. That's true. Well, Ann, I see you've joined us. Would you like to tell us what you thought of the book? We're not hearing you.
You're muted.
You're muted.
Muted. Yep, sorry.
Okay.
I was surprised that I liked it, actually, because I went into it thinking, this is going to be historic, and I don't know if I'm going to like it very much, but I found it very interesting, kind of more than just the history of the fire, but the history of libraries, kind of a psychological retreat into people's minds and how they think about different things, including libraries or fires and things like that. So it was kind of a history lesson and a mystery all in one. So that's what kept me reading.
Good.
I do have books that I can't part with because they're part of a series, and I feel like I should get rid of my Harry Potter collection, and I can't get rid of my Outlander book collection.
Oh no.
But I mean, other books, I feel like if I'm donating it to the library, that's giving the opportunity for somebody else to read it.
Yes.
So that's not a bad thing.
That's a good idea. Yeah. But it's still hard to do. It's still hard for us to get rid of them. So, well, anybody else have any questions or things that we should talk about? I've kind of run out of questions here. Oh, here was one though. Andrew Carnegie is perhaps the most famous supporter and benefactor of the libraries. Can you name a modern equivalent who is using his or her to underwrite public works? Or is it more important for the public sector to have big benefactors or overall community support?
I thought of the
Gates Foundation.
The Gates right away.
So did I.
Elaine?
The gates, the gates.
The
Gates.
gates.
Oh, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
I was actually in a book that I had just finished reading, and now I remember the name of it to share. It's called The Book of Lost Friends.
Okay.
In that book, they talk
that
about,
Lisa Wingate? Who was the author?
I think so,
Yeah.
and in there they talk about the Carnegie Library, and I went, I've never heard of that before. So I looked it up, and I was just amazed. And then to see it pop up again, and to find that they are all over.
One
Yeah.
is for sale and you can buy it and make it into a house. That's been
Oh,
made in the
my.
library circuit.
Where is that?
I don't recall exactly where it is. I'll post it in the Readers Rampant Book group, but
Okay.
it's making the rounds in the libraries where we're all like, ooh, that'd be fun to live
Oh,
there.
wouldn't it be? Yeah, Carnegie Libraries are really big. He just, I think they had to, the town had to agree to, to fund it though, by their taxes. I think that's what it was. But as long as they agreed to support it after it was built, then they could apply and talk to, I don't know, how many did he build in his time?
Oh, I
Tons.
forgot now.
Tons, yeah.
It's said in the book, I think, but I don't remember.
It did.
Yeah.
It did.
I know the one in Naperville originally was a Carnegie Library, and then they built a new library. So, we moved out of that building and it became a church. Oops, somebody's phone. And then they wanted to, the church left and tear it down and make condos or something.
Hi,
But
Katie.
Historical Society
Hi.
proposed that they keep the front part of the structure. So the old historical Carnegie stone was really pretty. So they kept the front part, and then they built this something in back of it that, but you enter through the old library front place.
Okay.
But it would be interesting to have made that into a house.
I always wonder if there'd be ghosts in there, because they always say different public building institutions,
You never know.
According
I
to Google, 1,700 libraries. He offered to build more, but some towns refused his money.
I wonder why they have refused. Well, they didn't want to support it afterwards, maybe.
Perhaps, or felt they couldn't.
They
Yeah.
want to raise their taxes.
Taxes, yeah, for that. Yeah, but that was interesting. No, the Carnegie Libraries, that was a really big thing.
And weren't they all of very similar construction architecturally? I thought that they almost all looked alike.
That's what I thought too, but I don't remember if that happened or not. It's just that maybe it was the time that they were built, the design was similar.
Could be.
Yeah, I don't know. I remember the children's room in the old library was, in the basement. And when it flooded or the rains came, mushrooms grew underneath the librarian's desk in the funny carpet.
Oh, yeah.
It was probably, there was some issue there, but it was an old building. And we stored the newspapers in the boiler room. If you needed an old issue of the newspaper, you had to get the key to go and then go downstairs through the children's room and around to the boiler room. And there were shelves in the back, like a basement thing. And all the newspapers were in order down there. And one time I went skirting down and unlocked the door to go in, and I discovered a couple having lunch.
Oh, I'm glad it was lunch.
Oh,
Yeah.
that's what I thought you was going to say.
Yeah,
I didn't either.
much is better.
I said, oh, excuse me, and I went and got my paper and ran out again. But you never knew what was going to happen in that old building. It was kind of an adventure. But they were the best times, yeah.
When I first moved to Huntley, Illinois in 1987, they had no library at all, and they had defeated all these referendums previously. And so I worked with the group, and it did pass. We had all sorts of sales and promoted it and all that. And it passed. And so first it was in a little closet with donated books until we started getting tax money. Then it was in a medical building. They bought 1,100 square feet, which I ended up after I left the library at the Huntley School and retired. I worked there part-time. And then by the time I left in 10 years, they had this beautiful big library that is used, and all the farms are now developments. It's a great big suburb now.
Yeah, well, things change. Well, Sister Bay didn't have a library for a long time. It started in the little village hall in the back or in the corner of the kitchen, I think. And then it had a small building, and now they've got a bigger building. So it's interesting how libraries do grow. And the one final question, I guess, it says, are libraries a fair barometer to judge the mood of a city or a town? And how would you answer that one?
I'd like to think that the more the library is supported, well, the more people value it and maybe have been exposed to libraries before. And even if they retire up here, they want something of what they've had from a bigger city. I don't know.
I think you can sort of judge by the choices that the book clubs make too, a little bit about the difference in communities.
I'm reminded of when I grew up in a town that had 3,000 people. And to me at the time, it was a big deal because we were the county seat, and having 3,000 people was a lot to me. And so we had this really pretty courthouse and also a beautiful library with polished wood. I remember going there on a regular basis, and you could hear the clock tick and nothing else. Everybody was really quiet. So it was like a sacred building.
I can hear that.
Like, and to get, you got your books and you really handled them well, you know. So that's an interesting thought that you would say. This was a little town in Indiana that really didn't have a lot of, I shouldn't say it didn't have a lot of pizzazz, but you wouldn't think that the respect would be there, but I guess there was definitely respect for learning and education in books.
Mm-hmm. Any other comments on that? No comments. I don't know. I think we're always worried about the library, the books going away because of all the digital age and all the electron, you know, you could get things on the internet, and that libraries were not going to be. But for, the author seems to confirm the fact that libraries are a vital place, that people are always coming to gather together. It's not just the books, but it's the information and it's the community. So I think that it's important. It's nice to see that they're still busy and everybody's going there. So I know they always count numbers and things, but I think you can tell it's working. Any other comments?
It does reflect the community, though. I mean, depending on what it's like in the community, they have collections that concentrate more on one subject or that. Or say like Cleveland, or I can't remember the town it was I saw in 60 Minutes or something, that they're by a park and there's so many homeless people there that they have learned how to give that shot that will counteract the, you know, overdose and
Yeah, Narcan.
That's
where is it?
a lot going.
So I
Thank
mean,
you, everybody.
Yeah, I see Barb came on. She could say hi and tell us how she liked the book before she was at the dentist, I think, or something, right? Like she can't talk. Oh, we don't hear her, so I guess she can't talk.
she's muted.
Yeah. Yeah, she's just waving. Okay.
Well,
I've
Barb,
got to run, you guys.
Okay.
Bye.
Bye.
Barb,
Okay.
we recorded this one, so we'll be sharing it on the library's YouTube channel, and then I'll post it in the group on
Okay.
the Facebook group, so you can watch
Okay.
it and hear what
Great.
everyone thinks.
Thank you. See you
Thank
next.
you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.